upholding conservative principles. I will say representing Ohio values because the two most important women in my life, my mother was from Youngstown and my wife is from Troy. And so our family reflects your family. I also stand here with a great deal of pride in my state. The state of Florida has set a standard for this country. We are the fastest growing state in all of the United States. We lead the country in net in-migration and have done that every year since I've been governor. We are ranked number one for education freedom. We are ranked number one for parental involvement in education. Number one in economic freedom. Number one for public higher education. Our tax burden, and we have no state income tax. You all should try that sometime. It works pretty good. We have the second lowest tax burden per capita in the United States, the second lowest debt burden per capita in the United States, and we have the largest budget surplus in the history of the state of Florida, $23 billion surplus out of a $109 billion budget. And I'm proud that when COVID reared its ugly head, when the world seemingly lost its mind, when common sense suddenly became an uncommon virtue, the state of Florida stood strong as a refuge of sanity, as a citadel of freedom, not only for our citizens, but for other Americans and even for people around the world. We refused to let our state descend into some type of Faucian dystopia where people's livelihoods were destroyed. We proudly chose freedom over Fauciism, and we would not have enjoyed the success we have unless we had made those very unpopular, very difficult, but correct choices. And I think what Florida shows, leadership matters. Boldness is rewarded. I got elected in 2018 by 32,000 votes out of more than 8 million votes cast. That is less than 1/2 of 1%. And a lot of people said, and you guys know, Florida has been the most important swing state for a long time. A decade leading into my election, 1-point races for governor, president, you name it. So I come in under those very divided circumstances. People say, bide your time, don't make waves, don't upset this very delicate political balance that you see in the state of Florida. And I understood that advice, but I rejected that advice. My view is I may have earned 50% of the vote, but that entitled me to wield 100% of the executive power, and I intended to use it to advance a conservative agenda. I would do that based on conviction, not having my finger in the wind. I have not taken a single poll since I've been governor to tell me what to do on a given issue. Leaders are not captive to polls. Leaders get ahead of public opinion. They articulate the vision. They implement a vision. They deliver results. And guess what happens when you do that effectively? The polls move in your direction anyhow. I made sure that the people that were in our administration were in it for the right reasons. If they brought any other agenda other than what was in the best interest of the people of Florida and what was in the best interest of advancing our common agenda, then I showed them the door and I told them not to let it hit them on the way out. We don't have time for people bringing in their own agenda. I don't have time for drama or palace intrigue. I want to make sure we're getting the people's business done. I also said if we're going to do this right, we cannot be like some Republicans who get into office and they get scared to do something that the media is not going to like. They worry about what the left's going to say about them, and they're basically just like potted plants. No, in Florida, we went on offense. We took the fight to the left. We got ahead of issues, and we made sure that we were advancing the people's agenda, and I didn't care what the media had to say about any of that. And the final thing I said going into office was, I'm going to do what's right, even when it's not easy. And so when COVID was really at high bloom with the hysteria, I was taking stances that were totally contrary to what all the, quote, experts advised, what the media wanted to see, what bureaucrats were talking about. Heck, I even had some Republicans that were attacking me on all these different issues. And a lot of people said that I was basically digging my own political grave. But here's the thing. You know, as a leader, I had to make the decision. I needed to put the jobs of the people that I represented ahead of trying to protect my own job. I didn't know what the politics would be, but you know what? However that turned out, so be it. You got to do the right thing and let the chips fall where they may. So that's what we did. Fast forward 4 years later, November of 2022, we didn't win by just 32,000 votes. We won by over 1.5 million votes. We got the highest percentage of the vote any Republican governor candidate has ever had in the history of the state of Florida. We won Hispanics, 62% of the Hispanic vote. We won independent voters by almost 20 points. We were able to sweep in super majorities in the Florida legislature, the largest majorities in modern history. Through our efforts, we helped elect 19 conservative school board members throughout the state of Florida, which has shifted the balance on school boards. And for the first time since the Civil War era, there is not one solitary Democrat elected to statewide office in the Sunshine State of Florida. And to show you the effect of that, I quote a headline from a legacy news outlet. Quote, "There's no plan, there's nothing. Florida Democrats in despair over the future. That means Republicans are winning in Florida." What Florida's success shows is that the people, because Florida is now considered a red state, that didn't just happen by chance. We've moved people in our direction, and that's because the people side with us over the left on the issues that matter. They reject the left's tax and spend policies, which has driven inflation through the roof and escalated our national debt to $31 billion. No, they want fiscal sanity. They want tax sanity. They want a place like Florida that doesn't even tax your income at all and yet runs huge budget surpluses. They side with us on supporting law and order over rioting and disorder. We support the police. We reject rioting. We will not allow police to be defunded. And when we see Soros-funded prosecutors wreaking havoc across our country, we stand up and say no. And in fact, I'm the only elected official in the United States of America that when we had a Soros-funded prosecutor in Tampa say he didn't want to enforce the laws that we had enacted in Florida, I removed him from his post. He is history. The people support our position that our schools should be about education, not indoctrination. We want a search for truth. We want academic rigor. We reject things like critical race theory that teaches kids to hate our country and to hate each other. It's wrong for schools to teach kids that they were born in the wrong body or that they can change their gender. Gender ideology has no place in our school system. And I don't care if Disney doesn't like it. I'm doing what's right for my people, and they can take a hike. They support us on our insistence on having strong borders and upholding the rule of law when it comes to who's entering our country. They reject open borders. They reject the fentanyl that is pouring into our country and killing Americans by the tens of thousands. No, they want to see us do like we did in Florida, ban sanctuary cities, send 50 illegals to Martha's Vineyard, making sure that we're doing what's right to fight back against the problems with illegal immigration. And I believe we do need to actually construct a wall along the southern border. And what I've told President Biden is, we had the hurricane came through Southwest Florida. Some of you told me that you have property down there. Some of you were affected by it. One of the things that storm did, Ian, it knocked out a bridge to Pine Island and it severed the Sanibel Causeway in 3 different areas. The local officials were telling the residents it's going to be 6 months before we're going to be able to get people back over those bridges. And, they came to me. They're like, Governor, can you help us? Because the islands are going to die if you do that. So I said, yeah, I'll help you, even though it wasn't state bridges. So I got my people together. I said, stop the bureaucracy, stop the red tape, don't do any stupid meetings, just build these dang things and get it done. And so Pine Island Bridge didn't take 6 months. We did it in 3 days, and then we did Sanibel in 2 weeks after that. And I just bring that up because I will take my people from Florida, these builders, I'll send them to the southern border. They'll build the wall, put us in, coach, we'll get it done. The people side with us, believing yet businesses should focus on their core mission. They should produce their products, provide their services. They should not become corporate woke agenda pushers where they're trying to change policy through ESG or woke banking, trying to get done through corporate means, which they could never achieve at the ballot box. No, you go woke, you go broke. It's not the way to do business, and it's not good for our economy. They side with us on wanting the restoration of constitutional government. They do not want to see a big, sprawling, unaccountable, weaponized federal bureaucracy. President Reagan used to say the most dangerous words in the English language, wrong from the government, and I'm here to help. And when he was talking about that, he was right, but a lot of that was central planning run amok. These were do-gooders who thought that they could end poverty by creating these programs, and it had the opposite effect. I think the difference between Reagan's time and now is the power is being wielded sharply. It's being wielded on behalf of elites in our society against the conservative faction of our society, and that's the IRS, that's the FBI going to school board meetings, that is HHS trying to get nurses fired for not taking an NRA shot. This is a dangerous bureaucracy, and it needs to be brought to heel. So the left's agenda, and the common theme through a lot of the insanity that they're pushing, what infuses that is the woke mind virus. Woke ideology is a form of cultural Marxism. It's trying to divide the country instead of by class, by identity politics. It represents an attack on merit and achievement. It is basically a war on truth and a war on reason. And what we do in Florida is we recognize the threat of woke for what it is. We fight the woke in our schools. We fight the woke in the halls of the legislature. We fight the woke in the corporations. We never, ever surrender to the woke mob. Our state is where woke goes to die. So as we look into 2024, I can tell you this. The left is playing for keeps. If the Democrats are able to sweep these elections, retain the White House, take back the House, add a couple seats in the Senate, they are not going to be pursuing an agenda that's as American as apple pie. They are not going to be focused on kitchen table issues. No, what they're going to try to do, they're going to try to pack the U.S. Supreme Court. They're going to try to abolish the Electoral College. They're going to try to make Washington, D.C. a state, giving them 2 radical Democrat senators virtually for life, and they are going to try to impose ballot harvesting across this country and eliminate all state voter ID laws. That is not an agenda that's going to appeal to American families sitting over their kitchen table wondering what they're going to do with inflation or crime or education. No, that is an agenda that is seeking to make the conservative half of the country second-class citizens. They want us not to have power to be able to fight back against their agenda. So I think the stakes are very high, and I agree with Warren when he said Reagan's quote about freedom is 1 generation away from extinction. It's a great quote, but I did too. I thought it was hyperbole. You know, we're Americans after all. Isn't this freedom just in our DNA? But I think if the last few years haven't showed you this, I don't know what is. Freedom is fragile. It absolutely can be squandered. And that's something that our founding fathers understood very well. When they met in Philadelphia in 1787 to create our Constitution, many of them studied the history of every republic that had ever existed through all of human history, because they were trying to draw lessons about what they were trying to do, creating a written Constitution. And what they found was if you looked at every republic that had ever been done in the history of the world, they all had one thing in common, and it was this. Every single one of them had failed. And so they understood that it fell to the United States of America to determine once and for all, could people really govern themselves? Could we have a society based on the idea that our rights come from God, not from government? Can we have a country based on the rule of law, not the rule of individual men? And so when Benjamin Franklin walked out of that convention, he was asked by a woman, Dr. Franklin, what have you given us, a republic or a monarchy? Franklin's response was, a republic if you can keep it. You can have the best constitution in the world, you can have the best Declaration of Independence in the world, but ultimately it requires us as patriotic citizens to take the bull by the horns and stand up for freedom. I believe most Americans think our country's going in the wrong direction. Most are pessimistic about the future. But I'm here to tell you what we've shown in Florida is that decline is a choice. Success is attainable, and freedom is worth fighting for. So I can tell you this, as I get ready to welcome America's greatest First Lady up here to also share some thoughts, I can tell you this, I will be standing firm in defense of freedom. I will be holding the line in defense of our Constitution, and I will never, ever back down from a fight. Thank you all. We're going to have a little chat here. God bless everybody. Come on up here. The great First Lady of Florida, my wonderful wife, Troy, Ohio's finest. Thank you.
So, America's greatest First Lady. I mean, that was, I said, put the bar down just a little bit lower. That was a great speech. By the way, I'm so happy to be back home. It's been 20 years since I've been back to Troy, Ohio. I'm just not north of here. And so, by the way, so you know, the governor didn't have a chance to talk about. If you see 2 children running around, those are ours. They might be running under your table. They have a lot of sugar in the mayor. She gave us candy box, which was great. But then, you know, that's been going all day. So he didn't tell me this, but we have 3 kids, small kids, 6, 5, and 3. So we are the oldest, the first baby born in the Governor's Mansion in more than 60 years. So we're the first family to have really, really small kids. And so it's a little bit of an adventure, but we always want to try and bring them with us. And so, of course, today when we were moving back to Ohio, we went to Mays Diner, by the way. If you go to Troy, you're going to Mays Diner. And you know, the kids, our son, was so enthralled by the chocolate milkshake that he would not leave the diner. He took it with him. So anyway, they have had a lot
interesting. So, as Warren said, I was a naval officer, and so my first duty station was Naval Station Mayport, which is northeastern Florida, great base. And so I got on board, and probably within like 3 or 4 months, I was at this like driving range where you could hit the golf balls, because it's like, I was a baseball player all through college, and like, I needed like another hobby, and I didn't want to, I like hitting things, so I tried to start taking that up. So I'm out there, and I look in front of me, and there was kind of an empty bay, but there were some balls left over, and then next to that, there was this really pretty young woman that was hitting golf balls. Turns out to be this one. Now, I was looking at her, she was looking back in my direction. I thought she was checking me out. In reality, what she was doing is looking to see if I was going to take the rest of the golf balls that were sitting in the bay in between us. Well, and maybe I like to think I would have approached her anyways. And so we just started talking. I said, do you want to hit these balls? We split them. We ended up going out after that, and kind of the rest is history. So you never know what tomorrow will bring, and that encounter, and I talk about it in the book, was probably the most important encounter that I ever had in my life, because the rest is really history. We were I was a U.S. congressman, as Warren said. When I ran the first time in 2012, I was out of the military. I mean, no one knew who the heck I was. And we just decided, okay, there's 7 Republicans running. You got to do certain campaign things, raise resources, all that. We're like, you know what? We're just going to knock on the Republican primary voters' doors. So I bought her a little motorized scooter. I had a pickup truck. I'd load the scooter in the bed of the truck. We would drive to a neighborhood. I would drop her off at one side of the neighborhood. I'd go to the other. We had the list of the Republicans that voted in the primary. We would knock, and then we'd meet in the middle. We'd put the scooter in and go to the next neighborhood. And so basically it was like a shoe leather thing. Here's the thing. When you show up at someone's door, you look them in the eye, shake their hand, that goes a long way with them. And I guarantee you, of the people that I showed up and shook their hand, I got a huge percentage of them to ultimately vote for me, especially in a primary, because everyone's saying they're more conservative than sliced bread. They all say the same things. Whatever percentage I converted at the door, she did probably 99%, because when she showed up and she's there saying, my husband's running and singing my praises, they looked at it as like, well, if he was good enough to get her to marry him, he's probably good enough for Congress. Daytona Beach, right? Yes. So they had all these guys who got on Harleys, and I come down Main Street in this little $200 electric moped, and I'm just giving them thumbs up. They're like, yeah, it's okay. They didn't remember it. I ended up getting a little basket in front, and the litters are right there. So I said I maximized it. You were 2 right at the driveway, or literally right there. I didn't have to get off the moped. Sit there, get a little literature, get back on, right down, and we must have knocked out that. It was a lot of fun. So, and as you get beyond like a congressional, like running for governor in Florida, I mean, we have over 20 million people at the time in 18, over 22 million now. That's not going to go far enough, because you just can't physically do it. So that was very, that was like a labor of love in a different way for traveling abroad. But what happened with us? So when I was in Congress, Casey and I went to Israel on a congressional trip. And we didn't have kids at the time, but we knew we were going to have a family. So she took just a plastic bottle, that you would have water in and buy at the store. Now the labeling was in Hebrew, so it was a little bit different than America, but same thing. We went to the Sea of Galilee, and she got water and filled it up. And we said, when we have kids, we're going to use the water from the Sea of Galilee to baptize our kids. And so we brought it back. Madison was born 2016. We did the baptism, used the water. Great. Mason is born March of 2018. Well, I'm running for governor. I'm a U.S. congressman. She's doing stuff. We didn't have time to do a baptism, so we're just like, let's just get through the election. Let's get through the election, and then we'll figure out what happens. And so we get through. I win the election. So then we're like, we're going to have the inauguration in early January in Tallahassee. All our family and friends are going to come anyways. My uncle's a priest, so I can wheel him anywhere to do this. And so we said, let's just do it in the governor's residence in Tallahassee. So, you do the swearing in, you give a speech. Usually they do a parade. I canceled the parade. I don't like pomp and circumstance anyways. And so instead of doing a parade, we went back to the governor's residence, used the water for our son, no problem. The problem, though, was we then go, you have the inauguration festivities at night. We were not used to people picking up after us. Well, this is the governor's mansion of Florida. So the people that work there, they're cleaning up. All they saw was a plastic bottle with a little bit of water in it. They didn't know what it was. So that water got flushed down the sink, and the bottle got recycled. So then I announced a couple weeks later, I think I was actually down in Boca Raton doing stuff with the Jewish community, and I said, just so you know, because I had announced in my inauguration speech we were using the Sea of Galilee water from Mason's baptism. Just so you know, the rest of our water got put down the sink. We're out of water. We don't have a bun in the oven right now, but you never know what will happen. Literally within 24 hours, there were people digging into the Sea of Galilee in Israel. They didn't send it in a plastic. They sent it in a big glass jar. And that sat on my desk in the governor's mansion until we had our third Mamie in March of 2020. And we used the Sea of Galilee water to baptize her as well. Disney era. And it wasn't my idea, it was her family's idea.
We were actually, it's really so funny, I was in the thunder because we were going over it, and I asked my sister anything, for the wedding, or after, and we joked with me, and said, no, whatever you want, I want to do your day. And we were open words, and he said, whatever, just don't do what?
I said, listen, I just wanted, because they actually do have a wedding chapel, it's really nice, but I was like, I cannot have Donald Duck or Mickey Mouse showing up in the wedding. I just need to have, and she was fine with that. So people had our wedding pictures on the internet, like throughout the whole time we've been elected to things, and no one really knew where they were from, and they were actually from there. So we were leaving, this is like almost 15 years ago now, it was what it was. Little did we know that we'd end up being toe-to-toe with these guys 15 years down the road. And oh, by the way, on that, we stripped them of their self-governing status. We've now taken over, and we're governing, and we're going to make sure they pay their debts and everything. They're fighting us on this. The media tried to act like that Disney is like going to get out from under. No, that's not going to happen, and we will have news on that next week. So stay tuned. There will be round 2 in terms of those fireworks.
They should be teaching in school, like reading, writing, and arithmetic. Our children are in kindergarten and pre-K. They should be colors, numbers, basics, right? And so when you see them fighting the good fight in front of the camera, it's because ultimately we want to make this world better to our children, better to God, and we have
was a big deal at the time because, there was no FaceTime, none of that stuff. I mean, basically, there were like calling cards you could maybe use like on like landlines and then satellite phones. And so I had a satellite phone that I was able to use and basically cold called her on the air, and they put it on, and that was probably the most surprised I've ever seen her react to doing that, to getting a call locked in from Iraq. But we weren't married at the time, and then when I got back, that's when we ended up getting engaged and then getting married, and kind of the rest has gone from there. But it was, I'll tell you though, one of the things that stuck with me about the whole experience in Iraq was this is such a small percentage of our society that was serving. And so a lot of these guys had done 2, 3, 4 deployments, and that's not really normal. And so I didn't necessarily know it right at the time, but the issues we've had with post-traumatic stress and all that, of course you're going to have that, because it's not normal to have people spend more time in their 20s in Iraq and Afghanistan than they are back in the United States. And so we were able to do stuff as a congressman, to get the VA in a better spot to help these folks. We did some legislation that passed after I left, but was my original idea. And I'm always mindful about there's some people that they want to send our troops wherever for whatever ambition they have. I think that's a very solemn obligation, and I think if you're going to do it, you got to have a very clear idea of what you're trying to accomplish. You better have all guns blazing, accomplish that, and then bring everybody home. That's how you got to do it. So we took a picture before I got inaugurated in January of 2019 at the desk in the state capitol, the governor's office, and it was me sitting at the desk, our daughter Madison, who was 2, on my lap, Casey standing next to me holding Mason, who was then 9 months, and that picture's out there. For this re-election in the second term, we did the same pose. Madison, though, who was then 6, Mamie, who wasn't even around in 19, was 2, and then Mason 4, standing Casey, same pose. And we put the pictures out next to each other and sent out a tweet. You could see it on our social media. And I'm the husband. You could say I've got to say this, but I would challenge you to look at those 2 pictures, realize that over the course of that 4 years, she had another child, did a whole bunch of stuff for the state with all these great initiatives, and recovered from breast cancer and beat breast cancer. And she was prettier in the picture in 2023 than she was in 2019. How do you do that?
Well, first, let me just say, you're probably a very sweet job. You were 4 years ago, but I'll take it. Anybody but I can get it. But I just want to say, one thing. When I walked in the room, a lot of you came up to me and you told me that you had been praying for me, for my battle with cancer, and you've been praying for my family. I was even handing a rosary when I walked in here, that you've been praying over for me, and I'll tell you what that means to the world. That up in Ohio, back where I grew up, back where I just remember going to Hayes, and I still walk in Hayes, by the way. I'm pretty understood. I think it's so wonderful for me. I think you said so well for me. But to know that you were praying for me and my family, I can't even begin to tell you what that means. And I know that I would not be sitting here if it weren't for those prayers. So anybody out there who is fighting the good fight like I just have hope that you can beat it. There's a lot of great advancements in technology and new innovations and a lot of good treatments. So just have the faith. Know that we're praying for you as well. That it means to the world that you have so much.
Well, we appreciate y'all having us. The country's going in the wrong direction. I think the state of Florida and what we've been able to do, that should be a source of inspiration and hope for Americans all across this country. There's nothing wrong with our country that cannot be fixed if we just embrace the principles that made this country great. And I think we can unleash a great revival of the American spirit very, very soon. So thank you all. God bless. Thanks so much.
Let's let Governor DeSantis and First Lady know what Butler County thinks. Wow.
Thank you.